straighter than you were a second ago. And close your eyes and relax, but keep an alert mind. And bring your focus to your breath. And notice, as you may not have noticed earlier today, that the breath is going on automatically. But now take time to appreciate that you're able to breathe. And take even breaths and focus on the inward and outwards. When you exhale mentally, you can say out. And when you inhale mentally, you can say in. And let any other thought energy that's around your mind just float off like clouds. And be here in the present. Now notice that you're the one watching your breath. You can objectify it because you're the witness, the conscious entity within the body who's animating the body and who is separate from the body. The body's going on as a biomechanical machine, and we're along for the ride. And now for a moment, just notice any thought energy that you may have going on. And just observe the characteristic of that thought energy. Is it pushing you to go somewhere? There's something you need to take care of. Often when we sit down to be peaceful, the mind says, don't just sit there, do something. But for now, don't do something, just sit there and see what it feels like. And notice that you're separate from that thought energy. You're able to objectify it. And continue to breathe and relax, but keep an alert mind. And we'll start with some mantra meditation. You can follow along with me behind muted mics. I'll start with the single syllable Om. 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 Notice how the vibration from the mantra resonates, especially in the area of the heart, synchronizes the energies in our mind and body. And now, together, let's chant the mantra, Nitai Gauranga. Nitai Gauranga. Nitai Gauranga. Nitai Gauranga. Nitai Gauranga. Nitai Gauranga. Notice how that mantra reverberates in your mind and your body. And bring your attention back to your breath. And rub your palms together, create some external sensation in your body, and open your eyes and come back into the Zoom room. Welcome back, everybody. So I'd like to ask you, what do you think of when you hear the phrase, a fish out of water? What does it conjure? What does it bring up for you? Let's hear, and you can light up the chat box here, and then you can come off mute and comment.
Can I add?
Please.
I felt the first impression is out of place.
Okay. It indicates being out of place.
Yeah.
Being out of one's element, right?
Right. It's kind of where naturally your habitat is. You're just out of that place. So fish out of water.
Yeah. Sheila says struggling. Somya says anxiety. Blanca says discomfort. Rashmi says uncomfortable. Okay. In the wrong environment. Right. So this is a common phrase. I feel like a fish out of water if you feel like you're in the wrong place. Anna says felt out of place. Nice. I mean, not nice, but it's not nice to feel those things. But it's nice that we're all on the same page and appreciating it. So there's a reason for feeling out of place. There's also a philosophical principle behind it that we've talked about before, and that is that we're in a bidimensional universe. The world around us is made of matter. In fact, the elements of that are listed in the Bhagavad Gita as earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and ego. These comprise the gross and subtle material elements. That's what our bodies are made out of. They're extremely sophisticated machines, aren't they? And then there's us. We're categorically different from those elements. We're infinitely more subtle. We're spiritual energy. However, we're residing within the material body, and the element of ego is like a virtual machine that helps us to interface with the body and therefore the rest of the world. And that's how we take in the sights and sounds of the world as we do. They come into the mind and we observe them on the mirror of our minds. So we're not really directly experiencing the world, that we're experiencing reflection that's there within the mind. And the material energy is frustrating because we're dealing with an energy that is clunky and that is always falling apart. Even as we speak, everything around us, the office you're sitting in, the chair you're sitting on, if you're sitting on a chair, the clothes you're wearing, even the body you're sitting in right now is falling apart one way or another. And we, as spiritual beings, have a different constitution altogether. We never fall apart. In fact, in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna, the teacher, says that the living force, the spiritual being, the soul, it can't be cut, it can't be dried, it can't be drowned, it can't be blown up. It never deteriorates. It's always youthful and vibrant. However, when I'm in an environment, a material environment, and I identify with it, I start actually thinking, I am my body, or I am material. And that's where anxiety comes from. And that's where the discord comes from, where I start to think that, well, I'm in the wrong environment. As Subramanian said, or Blanca said, it feels some discomfort. It's the dichotomy between me as a spiritual being and the body. So it's exactly like a fish being out of water. And fortunately, there's a simple solution to this. And I'd like to see if you could suggest what it is. I already gave it away in the subtitle of the program today. But what is the solution for a fish who's out of water? I'd like to hear some erudite answers, please.
Come back to water.
Thanks, Anna. You're always so commonsensical. And go back into the water, right? Does everyone agree with that? It's Occam's razor. Does anybody know what that means? The simplest answer is usually the best. And that's the answer. Go back into the water. So today we're going to talk about what it means for us as fish out of water to jump back in the water. I have experienced myself of feeling really out of place in this world, and then finding a place to repair to where I don't feel out of place. It's the spiritual practice of bhakti, or devotional service, that I learned many years ago. And I find it to be an always available environment or atmosphere that I can create so that I feel like the fish who's gone back in water. So let's take a look and see a few thoughts, perhaps, based on this idea. Are you going to be able to project, JM? Your screen? It's just your Zoom screen is having a psychedelic experience today. Okay, so fish out of water, the idiom itself, many people have posited ideas of what that means. And here's one of them that I extracted from an internet site, that a person who feels uncomfortable or embarrassed because of being in an unfamiliar, incompatible environment. What does incompatible mean? Could somebody look the word up and give me the etymology? Maybe you could put it in the chat box, incompatibility. Just interested where the word comes. Let's look at it one more time, the definition, while somebody's looking up incompatible. Okay, here it is again. A person who feels uncomfortable or embarrassed because of being in an unfamiliar, incompatible environment. And remember, this is the thesis I'm putting forward today, is that when I'm identified with matter, when I think I am my body, I belong to this world, the material world, there's an uncomfortable feeling, and I feel incompatible in that environment. What's the other word that's there? You can keep it on that slide for a second. Late Middle English from medieval Latin, incompatibilis, from in, not, and compatibilis. See, compatible. Okay, give me compatible now. That's where we want to go and find that word. And let's see the slide again, please. Two things so opposed in character as to be incapable of existing together. of two things so opposed in character as to be incapable of existing together. So a person who feels uncomfortable or embarrassed because of being in an unfamiliar, incompatible environment. Has anybody here ever felt embarrassed in their own body? Actually, I don't know if I want to go there. Yes, it can be embarrassing, right? The body? Possible? Yeah. Jay, you're appearing in many places at once now. You're on the slide also. Okay, let's see if there's another slide. The material world is a foreign environment for the spiritual beings. So this is a foreign environment, the material world. Let's just discuss it for a minute. In what ways is this material world that we live in a foreign environment? You could speak up and talk about being in a faraway land or feeling like a foreigner in this world. What about it seems foreign? The material world. Yes.
Just a quick question, probably more fundamental. Before that,
Yeah.
can you please give a definition of the spirit?
Yes. So the spiritual soul is a part of the supreme spiritual soul, who's the origin of everything. So the analogy that's most useful in this is the sun. Sun is the source of all heat, light, energy in this universe. And the sun has several aspects. Even though it's one entity, we can see it variously. For instance, there's the sun globe, and emanating from the sun globe, there are sun rays. If you analyze the sun energy that's coming from the sun, you'll notice that it's tiny little photons, and they're vibrations of light. So if a sun ray comes into your room right now, Blanca, you might say something like, oh, the sun's in my room. But if the whole sun was in your room, then your room wouldn't be there, and neither would your body. And remember, we said before, you can't be burned as a spiritual soul. So you'd be okay, but your body would be evaporated immediately. And so the sun and the sun rays are one, but different at the same time. So we have an original divine conscious source that has three qualities called Sat, Chit, Ananda. So Sat means eternality, something that's not created, and it always existed and always will exist. Chit means cognizance. In our meditations here, we've noticed that we're cognizant beings. We can be cognizant that we're cognizant. We can notice our own consciousness, which is fascinating. And we have volition. We can point our consciousness, our attention wherever we wish. So the original source, of whom we're like a tiny photon, an emanation from that source, has these qualities. That's why we have them. The sun has all the qualities of light and energy, and so we do, but in minute quantity. And then the third is Ananda. Everyone please say Ananda. It's a nice word. Ananda. Thank you. Ananda. Ananda means bliss or happiness. As spiritual beings, our inherent nature is joyfulness, happiness. We're jolly by nature for no reason. Hey, you don't have to wait to win something to be happy. That's our state. So the quality of spirit is Sat, Chit, Ananda, eternality, cognizance, and bliss, Sat-chit-ananda. So we are tiny units of consciousness that have these qualities, and we're indivisible. It means we're always individuals, and we always remain individuals, always have been in the past, and we always have that quality of Sat-chit-ananda. Can anybody remember what they mean? You could either speak up or put it in the chat box. And then after we do that, I'm going to get back to Blanca because I think she has more to her question. Who remembers what Sat means? You can write in it. The always existing, right? Yeah. And how about Chit? JM, you tell me who's writing on the chat box, please.
Yeah, so we have things coming up on chat. Rajesh says self-eternal. LV says existence, consciousness, bliss, Sat-chit-ananda. I think LV gave all the answers. CK says cognizance. Rajesh says eternal and cognizant. I think conscious. Rajesh says ananda, bliss.
Yeah, very good. So this is our nature as spiritual beings. Now, when we get into a material body and we identify with the body, there's a way in which we start thinking that I'm not Sat. That means I had a beginning. I was born in 1956, and who knows, at any time I can drop off. I can drop off this mortal coil that I'm in right now. And it's a little daunting, isn't it? The prospect that I won't exist at some time. In fact, when I was a child, I was fascinated by death. And I used to ask my older brother, what does it mean? And once he told me, it means when you die, you become nothing. And I said, how could I become nothing? I'm something now. I didn't like it at all. I complained to my parents, and they tried to calm me down, saying, don't worry, you're not going to die anytime soon. And they thought, anytime soon, that's no consolation. Sooner or later, I don't like the idea at all. And this is one of the aspects of being a fish out of water. We don't like it. We don't like the idea that I'm not going to exist at some time. We also don't like getting old. That's why, I try to keep myself looking younger as long as possible. So there's an incompatibility between my nature as Sat-chit-ananda and matter, on the other hand, is, get ready for this. Are you ready? I'm not convinced you're all ready. Come on, work with me, people. Give me at least a thumbs up or something. SN, thank you very much. Thank you, Pankaj. Ready? Here it goes. Little Sanskrit terminology, but you're going to like it. It's like a parlor trick. In Sanskrit, if you put an A before words, most of the time it reverses the meaning. So the nature of the spiritual being is Sat, Chit, Ananda, but the nature of matter is Asat, Achit, and Nir Ananda. Little difference in that one, Nir Ananda. So that means we're not eternal. Matter is not eternal. It's constantly mutable. It's eternally mutable. It's always changing, whereas we're not. And then it's not conscious, and nor is it a blissful energy. It drags us down as we become more involved with matter. If you can imagine a spark leaving a fire, and depending on what surface it lands on, it either extends itself, like if it lands on dry grass, it can then conflagrate and become a fire, or if it lands on a neutral surface, it can stay for some time, but if it lands on a bog or something that is a little bit moist, then it becomes extinguished. So our nature is Sat-chit-ananda. When in contact, when I become identified with matter that drags me down into its own nature, then I start thinking that I'm not eternal and that I lose my sense of cognizance.
So
Yes, please.
just a little follow-up question, probably. So, so what you said then is that we got one spirit, like from the minute we are born, right? We got this spirit, and it doesn't grow or it doesn't decrease or augment or anything. It's just that we're not conscious of it, and the more we do spiritual activities or the more we're conscious of it, then it's just that we are conscious of it, and we probably would do more things associated with spiritual activities than the opposite, right?
Well, as usual, Banco, you're right on the money there. I just make one slight adjustment, and it's just semantics. But when you introduced the subject this time, you said when we're born, we get the spirit. But the way that the wisdom literatures put it is that we are the spirit. It's not that we're a body or an entity and then we get a spirit or we have a soul. We are the soul. We are the spiritual being, actually. But we're accommodated by material body because of our interest or becoming attracted to the material nature. And so we're sort of on a joyride that goes wrong, being ensconced in the material world. So with that slight adjustment, there's a sea change, actually, that and it's not that I have a spirit. I am the spiritual soul. Everything else you said is so perfectly aligned. It's so true. And that's what you said is very much in line with the idiom we're looking at today, the fish in water, the fish out of water. Because I'm a spiritual being, I'm used to Sat-chit-ananda. But when I leave the spiritual vibration, an environment, a spiritual habitat, if you will, and I get into a material environment, I can get absorbed in it, but it really doesn't bring me happiness. The only real happiness in the material world is ultimately a temporary relief from stress or distress. Whereas real spiritual happiness is continuous and it's not dependent on getting something or any particular environment. That's just who we are. So what you said was apt. According to the wisdom literature, when we get involved in a spiritual practice, we notice our own nature. We're able to feel happy in any circumstance, and we become cognizant. Part of the cognizance really is what knowledge is defined as in the Bhagavad Gita is the perspective of I'm not my body. And so it's put like this: the body is a field of activities, and we're the knower of the field. So we're inside a body that's described as a field of activities. Sometimes the body is described as the city of 9 gates. 1, 2, 3, you can start counting these senses. There are 9 gates, and we're in the city, but we're not the city. We're just residing here temporarily. So yes, getting absorbed in the spiritual environment is what spiritual practice is all about. Okay, JM, what else do we have here? Blanca, thank you very much for elevating the conversation as usual.
Thank you.
So we are not our material bodies. And I mentioned before that we have a gross and subtle body. So in the modern perspective, we could say that the body, the gross body, see, there are bones and there's flesh and there's water. It's all held together in a framework here. This is like the hardware. And then there's the software, which is the subtle matter. Mind, intelligence, also called buddhi, and ego are subtle elements just as much as, or perhaps we could relate to this. I'm not a computer engineer by any means, but there we could see the hardware, and then we say software that runs the hardware. So that's all material. That's not us. That's just the machine that's running. There's the operator of the computer. That's the conscious being, and that's us. Okay, so we're encased in both the gross and subtle body. Our bodies and the material world are uncomfortable. So there's threefold miseries. These are described. In fact, the personification of the material world is a goddess named Durga. So Ga means to go. It's short for the word in Sanskrit, gachati, and dur means difficult. So it's difficult to go anywhere in this material world. It's also difficult to stay. And this goddess is holding a three-pronged instrument of torture. It's got three prongs on it. And so those are called adhyatmic, adhibhotik, and adhidaivik klesha. So klesha means misery. So there's miseries that come from our own bodies and minds, those that come from others, and those that come from the ways that nature moves around us. I remember when there was an earthquake in the Bay Area where I live. And I forget what year it was. Somebody might remember. Maybe it was 1989 or something like that. The Loma Prieta earthquake. Maybe none of you were old enough to remember that. But in any case, a few freeways collapsed. A few houses went off their foundations. Gillian, you were there, eh? Oh, 1989. Okay, a broken clock is right at least twice a day, eh? So I remember thinking afterwards that if we didn't build brittle freeways and have brittle houses on the surface of the earth, we probably wouldn't even notice the earthquake at all. In any case, the movements of material nature we can see nowadays can cause a lot of distress. 1 minute you're sitting on your porch drinking a sarsaparilla, that means a root beer, and enjoying the environment. Next thing, floodwaters come up, or an earthquake, or something comes. Gidget, I think you're on mute.
I have to go.
Oh, there you are. Good to see you, Gidget.
All right, so let's do like that. Let's okay, because I hadn't planned on going on video. But I remember that earthquake, and I remember that I did everything opposite of what you're supposed to do. My friend was there. I lived in a garage apartment, and the garage apartment was on top of the garage. So there were stairs. When we looked down the stairs were weaved. It's like, we can't go downstairs. My friend stood in the doorway. My apartment at the time was in brass and glass. So I was actually standing in a way to hold my TV, hold my brass rack. I did nothing that you're supposed to do. She did everything, and she was banging between that door frame, and she was bruised from her shoulders to her hips. So sometimes you have to go with, I don't know, your spirit to let you know the right thing to do. Because some people talked about they were at a basketball game, but the basketball court was near the pool. The water from the pool came out and went into the auditorium. That was a crazy year, 1989. And yes, I'm old enough to remember.
Yay, a kindred soul. Thank you very much, Gidget. Yeah, and I don't think it's gotten any less crazy out there, because although 1989 was a crazy year, the hits just keep on coming. I mean, there's always something anywhere on the planet. There's some kind of disturbance, upset, and I take it as normal. That's a little strange, actually. What conditioned life means in the wisdom literatures is that I get used to the miseries, and I say, oh well, It's just part of life. But actually they say, no, it's not. We're fish out of water. We're in a foreign environment and we're really getting thrashed here. And this is not our home. It's not the place we're supposed to be. And we're not supposed to live constantly on the edge of being annihilated or displaced or disturbed. So this is the idea. Yes.
I just wanted to add an experience I had today, very relevant, I thought. I think I was just preparing deck for this session today. I was running a bit late. And then I knew that the show is on, so I need to get on Zoom. And suddenly I saw in my laptop, the Zoom application was not working, which means I cannot get on Zoom. So I tried to do something like it's 3 minutes left to go on live and it's not working. So I switched to another laptop to say, okay, maybe I'll go live with this laptop. I logged in and the show is on and I'm speaking. And suddenly I realized maybe audio is not working because whenever what you're saying, I was not able to hear. So the speaker is not working, but looked like maybe my audio is working. So I continue speaking anyways because I'm live and I need to still speak. And then realized the video is also not working because it was flickering, etc. So then I switched my camera too, and then I tried to go back on phone, dial in because my audio is not working. I can't hear what you're saying. And throughout this experience, thanks to everything that you have been teaching, I was still keeping a smiling face. I thought at least when I came on, I didn't know what is being heard, but I'm hoping I'm being heard. And throughout this experience, when I was preparing the slide, I thought it's not adhyatmic klesh, which means my mind was not disturbed. Even though everything around me was falling apart, my mind didn't look like disturbed, and I was not feeling disturbed internally. Definitely, it's not adi bhautik klesh. There is nobody else who was disturbing me, but for sure it was adi daivik klesh, where some higher force was actually, I don't know who it was, trying to put me through, maybe preparing for the session, I guess. That everything was falling apart, and I was still able to. I'm still alive, as you mentioned. I'm still alive. I survived this. So yeah. So thank you for everything that you taught me. That I went through this tumultuous situation, and I'm still alive. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Jay. Actually, it's one of the main teachings that Krishna gives in the Bhagavad Gita is to be tolerant, even amidst the changing. Of course, it may sound like I'm advocating the opposite and saying, well, we're incompatible here. Don't accept this as the standard of happiness. Just, however, once we have the perspective that we're just passing through, this is in our home, then it's much easier to be tolerant. If you get on a bus and you didn't get a seat, somebody else sat there, you have to stand up. If you know that you're getting off soon, it's not a big deal. If you think I'm going to be on this bus forever, this is my lot in life now, then it's a little bit disturbing. So having the perspective that this world is temporary by nature, it's never going to cooperate with us completely. It's not that somehow we're going to get the right configuration of leaders in the government, or then everything will come to, under control. Even in the best of circumstances in the material world, there's always some kind of disturbance and upheaval. That's the point about these three kleshas. So the overarching point is that's not natural. Don't say, don't accept it. That's fine. It's not. It's not. You're Sat-chit-ananda. You're not a product of the material world. All right, let's look at a few more slides so I can stop my pontification. Hey, Wolf's here.
Wolf, when Gidget says, be thankful you can stand. I think it's in bus if you can't sit.
Hey, I like that, Gidget. Gidget always takes the high road and the positive road. I like that. Bringing light and energy and positive energy to the world. And what about Wolf? What does he say?
Yeah, Wolf says, so what is the ultimate purpose of this business trip, please?
There, just like Wolf, right? Go right to the essence, right? Well, actually, it's cosmic sensitivity training. There's a way in which the various disturbances we feel. For instance, frustration is extremely useful emotion. Now, we're bound to be frustrated while encountering a temporary world. Well, from our perspective, we want everything to work right because that's the energy we are. Everything holds together, and we get frustrated with the material energy. So that in and of itself, that being the dichotomy between my experience and my expectation, is the gateway to self-realization. Because why would I be incompatible, or why would I notice my incompatibility with the material world unless I was more subtle and of a higher nature? I wouldn't even notice it. I just blend in with it. So when you find something that's out of place, you try to, if you're intelligent, trace out its source. If I'm walking in the desert and I suddenly find in the middle of nowhere a minted gold coin, I might say, where did this come from? It didn't just appear here in the desert magically. There was some source to it. So causality is really important. And so the design of this world is for two reasons. One is to accommodate us in our attempt to enjoy the varieties of the world. And the other is to give us wisdom, a lesson in refining ourselves and coming to our highest potential and remembering that actually we're spiritual. So my point is, and that may have sounded a little bit hard to understand, but what my point is that we get what we're after. So the material world is accommodating in the sense that if we want to remain unaware that this is, if I try to make this my home and say, no, this is my home, I'm an American, I'm Swiss, I'm whatever, and that's just the way it is, then there's an accommodating force in the world that allows us to live in that illusion. It doesn't last. That's what illusory means. It means it's constantly changing and I'll be buffeted from one place to the next. Or it becomes a springboard for self-realization. So the ultimate purpose, to actually directly answer your question, Wolf, for the whole program is to come to our highest potential, which lies in our identity as Sat-chit-ananda beings. And fortunately, it's not a difficult thing to do. It just requires a little perspective and, as usual, a practice to get us there. Thanks, Wolf.
So I got an F on the last assignment, right, as I put in the note here, and I got sent for re-education. One more opportunity. Got it. Thank you. Now it's all clear.
Yeah. Thanks, Wolf. It's always clear when you're here. Thank you. All right, JM, let's see a couple more slides if they're there. It's like we're building the road as we're talking. A higher quality of life is possible. That's important to point out. A higher quality of life is possible, but not by material arrangement. So I have to know the ways and means to make a higher quality life, and it begins by understanding what is my nature. So jump back in the water. So what does that mean? Jump back in the water. Spiritualize your life. You're spiritual by nature, so spiritualize your life. There are several categories that could be included in that. That is your life, your conception of the world, the way you see it, your lifestyle, and your sentiments. These three areas can be refined. So conception, this conception, just say it behind muted mics and see how it feels. I dare you. I am not my body. Try it again. I'm not my body. How did that feel, by the way? You can light up the chat box, or you can tell that a lot of people are smiling. Okay. The second one is this world. No, there's one more in that category. Yeah, this world is not my final destination. This world is not my final destination. So this is a conception. So the word conception comes from Latin, and it means what you pick up. That is what you reach for and grab onto in the world, conception. And as I hone my conception towards reality, which is seeing this world as a stopover, it's a brief stopover for a being that has always existed and always will exist. This is just a blink of an eye, this lifetime. JM, I think Gidget put something in the text box. Can you read it if your audio is working?
Sure. This is my birthday month. I always ask for something money can't buy. A smile, peace, no arguments, a foot massage. I've taught my family the pressure points. Laugh out loud.
Happy birthday, Gidget. I don't know what day it is, but it's birthday month, so that's pretty good. And yeah, I like that. Something money can't buy. And we notice that in lyrics of poems and songs throughout history. In recent memory, the Beatles sang that hit song probably at the end of the 60s, Can't Buy Me Love. and it very unconsciously, people just resonate with that. So yeah, obviously money can't buy me love. And so there's a higher sentiment that we're after. And it starts with this conception. I'm not my body. This world is not my final destination. Okay, so the second category, lifestyle. We can upgrade our lifestyle to a spiritual lifestyle. There are different aspects to our lifestyle. These are just a few, but one is work. The next is relationships, food, community. And I said lifestyle again, you can admit that. It's so these are a few. And in the practice of what's called bhakti yoga, there's a way in which to work with the conception that I'm doing this for a higher cause. For instance, if I'm working and let's say I'm giving away a percentage of what I earned for a spiritual cause, then while I'm working, I'm actually thinking I'm doing this for a higher cause. Also, if my life is dedicated to spiritual advancement, I'm working so that I can maintain my body. So that's also, the work also becomes spiritualized. And we've talked previously about the vital importance of relationships, because whomever we associate with, we develop the qualities of. And it's a one-to-one relationship. When we associate with people in a certain type of consciousness, we'll develop that consciousness. Food is another big one because we're actually ingesting it. And there's a way to take food that is healthy, not just for the body, but also for the mind and the soul. And that's important. And then one of the top on my list, although it sounds contradictory because it's on the bottom here, is community. We have to have some kind of community, spiritual community that we're involved with in order to fill up our hearts. We need association with friends and others, colleagues who are on the same track. So in upgrading our lifestyle, we can feel like the fish back in water. Let's see the next category. Sentiments. So one of the sentiments is that I enjoy through selfless service. So this is the mode of bhakti yoga or devotional service. It means that actually my nature, I don't need anything external ultimately, except there's a hierarchy of needs. I have to maintain the body to a certain degree, but an excess doesn't mean I'm going to be happy. In other words, an excess of material accumulation, more money doesn't make us happier. More anything material doesn't make us happier. We need a modicum of facility to maintain the body and mind, but extra does not help in happiness. What does help is the sentiment that I am a servant. And Anyone who does selfless service knows that he or she becomes bigger. It's what's called a Mahatma, or a great soul, and you feel naturally happy inside. It is, it resonates with our spiritual nature to do selfless service. So even if somebody starts by doing things like in a voluntary way, or gives some of the fruit of one's work away for a higher cause, he or she will start to notice, I feel happy. I feel happier. And that continues through the process of selfless service. These are some of the categories that are mentioned in the ancient wisdom literatures, how we can actually get back in the water and feel naturally happy, because that's who we are. That's what our nature is. All right, let's take a few reflections or questions. Reflection means anything you heard, a fragment, a sentence, a concept that you're taking away with you. And a question is, questions are the answer. Because if you have a good question, it can open up the conversation. Yes.
Gillian says, I've become a minimalist. It is so much less stressful.
I wonder why. Can you say why it's less stressful, Gillian? I mean, what's your theory behind it? What makes it feel less stressful to live in a more simple way? Gillian, if you want, you can unmute, or you can just, oh, okay, good.
He says, I've had houses and nice cars, but it never made me happy.
So it makes you happy to have fewer of those things? Is that what you're saying? Fewer is better. Okay.
Fewer.
Okay, thank you. Less stressful. Yeah, so we talked about this before. There's a principle in which when I contemplate the things of this world, and contemplation means I consider, yeah, maybe I want that for myself. And as soon as I develop an attachment for it, it becomes part of me. I have to contend with it after that. One of the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita is that our relationships with things can be balanced by using them in service. So if we see everything that we have as paraphernalia to be used in service, then it doesn't have that same oppressive nature. Yeah. One more comment by Gillian.
She says, a lot of people that have big houses and lots of cars only want more.
Sure. Yes, that can happen. And there's no end to how many zeros you can add to the end of a monetary equation. And, you might think if somebody had, I don't know, 50 million, isn't that enough? Isn't that enough? It's like, no. The other guy's making $1 billion. And the billionaire is thinking, well, the other guy's got more billions than I do. Unless I have a clear idea of what to do with energy, then it becomes a problem for me. So money is a kind of energy, and any energy becomes troublesome unless I know what to do with it. So the wisdom literatures say use it in service, then it doesn't become oppressive. Yes, JM, there's more pouring into the chat box.
I have one thing too.
I think.
Please.
Go ahead, Nirali.
Yes.
One thing that I realize time to time is that I'm trying to be nice to others in the sense I want to have them think of me as a perfect, whatever I do, the event or I meet, I want to come out as the, everybody have to like me. If not, I feel that, oh my gosh, I'm not that good. Just one person, right? And it always happens. And also not that, I also want people to, help me. It's like sometimes I feel that for some reason, not everybody is able to help me. I don't know what it is. It's like, it's my personality that makes them not help me. And I feel like, this resentment over years is getting less, but I still have those. And it's like you said, the spiritual being connected back to, where we are. It kind of helps me realize my faults and expectations, but sometimes it's just difficult, to get rid of your attachment to your perfect image or your, expectations.
Yeah, I do
How-
know. I could totally relate to it. I have a suggestion. Were you finished? It sounded like you
Yes.
had more.
Sorry,
Okay.
yes, finished.
Just it's a very understandable conundrum, and the world and the way we move about it is awkward because I'm identifying myself as a body and mind, and it's makes it harder in all sorts of circumstances, including in social relationships and so forth. The ego wants, yes, I want to be seen in a certain way, to be perfect, and so forth. One suggestion I had that came into my mind when you were speaking about that, I had said earlier that one of the aspects of going in the water and feeling safe and happy again naturally is spiritual community. And I've noticed that it takes a while to cultivate spiritual community, but if you can find a community of like-minded people who are endeavoring to improve themselves spiritually, and you can get your niche there. A spiritual community means people who are not as much on the level of judgment and ego. And I see that when they come together, such people, and over time they develop this kind of trust amongst each other, and there's an environment that's rather safe so that you can express some of the things. I mean, it's kind of happening here, right? In some ways, we've been
Yes.
together over the last couple of years, and there's a sense like, okay, this is
Yeah,
safe, right? And then you
definitely.
express yourself, and then it's sort of like, so if you have that on a regular basis, and I've been in that situation myself, that is in spiritual community, and I just noticed that it's a real refuge. So it's a very important part of maintaining integrity, because you have to have some place where people accept you as you are, and then you're able to also admit your faults, because that's a really therapeutic process, but it has to be to the right people in the right
Right.
environment. Otherwise it feels like maybe I shouldn't have said that. I
Exactly.
shouldn't have told them. I don't know how
Yeah.
they're going to take it. Do they now think less of me or something like that? But
Okay.
yeah, I
I'm
can
here to
totally relate.
correct myself. So yes, this is one of
Hey,
those.
right, nice.
Thank you.
Good mantras you got going there. Fantastic. Oh, JM, it looks like I did it again. I ran out a whole hour here, but I don't think it was wasted. We talked about principles that are universal and that have been passed down to us through wisdom literatures and great sages and so forth over millennia. And it's as applicable today as it was millions of years ago. It's easy spiritual technology that anybody can apply. So how about we go out with a mantra? JM, could you give us the one of the Maha mantras at the end with a new backdrop, something beautiful, and we'll say a couple mantras on our way out today, everybody. Ooh, that looks like the right backdrop for the season. Okay, so let's repeat this mantra. This is called the Maha Mantra, and it's a very powerful sound vibration that will bring us into awareness of our nature as being Sat-chit-ananda. So I'll say it 3 times, and if you like, you can repeat with me behind muted mics. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Well, you know, high in the Himalayas, the yogis come out of their caves every once in a while to get some fruits and roots. And when they see one of their fellow yogis high on the mountain paths, they raise their arms in the air and they call out this phrase that in translated English means keep the transcendental vibration going. So we're all in kind of cave-like rooms here. So everyone could turn on their camera for 2 seconds and put on your microphone, come off mute. And with the phrase is there in the chat box, everyone's saying it on chat. We say, Haribo.
Haribo!
Haribo.
Haribo!
Thanks, JM. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next week. Haribo.